she, her, he, him, they, them. We're seeing them next to names in email signatures, on Zoom windows, all the terms we call gender pronouns. For many people who identify with what we would consider maybe more traditional or binary gender terms like male or female, he or her, the sheer volume of terms can feel overwhelming and confusing. But the good thing is you don't need to know the ins and outs of every single term in order to be inclusive and respectful to everyone around you. Here's what you do need to know. The effort to acknowledge gender pronouns is part of a larger movement to create more inclusive environments in and outside of the workplace. In stating our own gender pronouns, how we'd like other people to refer to us, we're acknowledging that people may have different gender identities and that we can't always assume that identity based on someone's appearance or behavior or voice or the way they dress. The most common pronouns we see are he, him, she, her, and they, them. This last one removes gender entirely from the pronoun, which is why we refer to it as gender neutral. Another gender neutral pronoun you might see is sie, zer. There are a range of reasons why someone may prefer to use a gender neutral pronoun like they, them. They may not identify with either female or male gender, they may identify with both, or they may prefer to reject the recognition or concept of gender entirely. There are many more terms associated with gender identity that you may have heard of and some that you may have no clue how to define. Non-binary, transgender, cisgender, gender nonconforming. I've included a few resources with this video that provide really great explanations for a huge list of these terms that you may encounter. The most important thing to keep in mind on this topic is that there is a diversity of gender identities, many that may be very different from your own. We can't assume someone's gender identity based on their outsides. We all have different relationships with gender. Some of us may never really think about it. It's just not something that comes up in our day-to-day. For others, it's much more present. It may be a source of stress, discrimination, confusion, or pride. And for those individuals, being misgendered, in other words, being called by a gender we don't identify with, can be a source of a lot of stress and frustration. This is one of the reasons many people prefer to state their gender identity directly when introducing themselves, to clearly communicate how they identify and avoid any confusion for you. But using gender pronouns is not just for people who identify outside of the binary male or female gender identities. And it's not just for those who face stress or struggle with their gender identity. When anybody uses a gender pronoun, it communicates an awareness of gender diversity and support to colleagues and others who may feel underrepresented or sometimes unwelcome in their workplaces. According to a recent McKinsey study, more than half of transgender individuals report feeling uncomfortable being open with their gender identity in their workplaces. More than a third of transgender and gender nonconforming individuals have reported feeling that their gender identity has actually harmed their career prospects. So using gender pronouns is actually a really powerful gesture of allyship. It sends a signal to your colleagues that you're inclusive and respectful of everyone's gender identity, and that you want to make them feel welcome and comfortable. So what are some concrete things you can do now to use gender pronouns effectively and be what we call gender inclusive at work? First, if you're really confused by the whole gender pronoun thing, take some time to learn a bit more about them, and in particular, listen to the experiences of people who have very different identities to your own. Oftentimes, it's really difficult to understand the experiences of someone who's lived a very different identity than you. But just listening to those voices and hearing stories and perspectives of what it's like for them can go a long way in helping us understand more. Second, I really encourage you to show and share your pronouns. As I mentioned before, it's a great sign of respect and open dialogue about the topic of gender, and it shows that you're committed to inclusive leadership and an inclusive culture. It also is a really good strategy to invite others to share their pronouns. When you share your pronoun, it tends to make others around you comfortable sharing theirs. That can go a long way in helping you avoid misgendering someone. Third, when in doubt, most of the time, ask. Majority of the time in one-on-one interactions, it's welcome to ask someone's pronouns. And if you misgender someone by accident, don't panic. It happens a lot. Just apologize, correct it, and move forward. And don't forget to thank them for pointing it out to you. It can actually be a really hard and uncomfortable thing for someone to do in the workplace. So take that step to acknowledge the effort they made, thank them. I promise you, it goes a long way to communicate to them that you are an open and inclusive colleague and leader.